Hello, everybody. Welcome to Liberty After Dark. Yes, if you're in the chat room, I was warned that technologically we are having iffy chat, which I'm not sure what that means, but it means that the chat may or may not work. But it seems to be working right now. I see David Haglund, I see Charles Kennedy. Oh, and Jeffrey Tucker just joined us. Yay!
Hello!
Look at you. You look so handsome.
Thank you.
You got your bow tie. Are you in a tuxedo or is that just a dark suit?
No, it's just my work clothes. I just hadn't taken them off yet. So
Is that where you fix your car in?
I don't fix my car. What are you talking about, Rachel?
You have the market for that.
Yeah. Hadn't done that since I was like 7, yeah.
What?
Haven't done that since I was about 7.
Yeah. People for that.
Right.
So what are you drinking? What are you drinking tonight?
Oh, I've got a little bit of wine in a small glass.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that a Paisano or is that a?
It's a Burgundy.
Burgundy. That's your favorite.
Yeah, it's a pretty little simple Burgundy. It's really pretty much all I drink.
Yeah, I tried that wine after you recommended it, and it is fabulous.
Yeah, thank you for
Love
saying so. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm devoted to it. I mean, when I go out to restaurants, I'll get something a little different just because I don't have it, But as a home wine on daily drinking and that sort of thing, I love it. Yeah, makes me very
awesome.
Yeah.
I am doing something a little different tonight, though. I am not doing my old comfortable. I am actually drinking a Gewürztraminer from California because I thought it would go nicely with my quiche that I had tonight.
Ooh,
and indeed it does. But Gewürztraminer is usually a little bit too sweet for me, but it's a nice spring day. It seemed like the thing to do.
It is so pretty out, isn't it? Is it pretty where you are?
It's amazing. And Atlanta is, I think, very similar weather, but it's amazing. It's like I have to spend like an hour just, looking at all my flowers and birds, and I just can't get anything done for a little while.
That's
So, Jeffrey, you have written many things of late that I'm very interested in, that are very intriguing.
I had this article today that just like rocked it so hard, and probably because it had the word Jew and Nazi.
Nazi and cake. Cake. That's what got me.
Right. So I guess that's why. But I was actually dealing with a serious issue, and it was one that I had to spend several days thinking about. I think the Libertarian Party debate between Gary Johnson and John McAfee and Austin Peterson occurred last Thursday or something like that. And there was this.
And round 2 is tomorrow night.
Oh, is it tomorrow night? Okay, I won't be able to see it, but I was intrigued by it because Gary Johnson was asked whether or not he really wanted to repeal discrimination laws insofar as they affected religion, so that and which you cannot currently discriminate on grounds of religion, and whether he would preserve that. And he said, oh, yeah, now's not the time to get rid of it because we have, a wild sort of anti-Islam feeling unleashed in this country. And for God's sake, if we got rid of those laws, we don't know what would happen. I mean, for example, a public utility might just shut off electricity to a Muslim neighborhood, and that would be catastrophic. So I favor retaining those laws, which has a superficial sort of plausibility to it.
It seems like there could be a distinction between, sort of non-essential services and utilities, and those are like quasi-government. I don't know. It seems like that would be a pretty easy exception to make.
Right, I would think so, and also I'm sympathetic to Johnson, right? So I would, and also that stems from a good impulse that he has. I mean, I wouldn't want to put that down and say, oh, well, that's ridiculous, from a libertarian point of view. It seemed to me like a pretty solid argument to make. And then Austin, of course, as is his nature, immediately seized on it and said, oh, no religious discrimination. I mean, would that imply then that a Jewish baker would have to bake a cake for a Nazi? I mean, he like jumped in there and
all the way to Godwin's law.
Right, exactly, right away, and it was the kind of the most, I would say, memorable moment of the debate. And Johnson said, "Well, I guess I guess that would imply that, and he just kind of like conceded the point. And it took me a few days to sort of think through this issue, actually, because I mean, it's very easy to sort of say, "No, we're libertarians. You can do what you want," but I really wanted to.
Your article brought up some really excellent points about, actually Jews and Nazis in pre-World War Germany, and how with all of the social pressure, people still wouldn't stop patronizing Jewish businesses, and it took laws to make them stop patronizing Jewish businesses, and then eventually,
Right.
all that other stuff that happened legally.
Right. And this is the extremely important point. And I thought about this because a lot of very good people, including Gary Johnson, favor these anti-discrimination laws, right? And so the question is like, why? Well, their answer is that they say if you permit people to engage in these kind of invidious acts, against people based on race or religion or whatever, that will organically mutate into a kind of a bigger problem. And then you end up with Jim Crow laws, segregation.
But people get it backwards, don't they? I mean, the Jim Crow laws were enforced segregation by law. If they had just let the Jim Crow laws go and let people come together peacefully, they eventually would have. It might not have been overnight, but I mean, the government enacted Jim Crow.
Right, that's the key thing to understand here, and it took me a while to, maybe I'm a little slow, but it took me a while to sort of think through the implications of this. It's like, okay, so what does this imply for the kind of society we want to have, and that's why I turned to Mises, because now
what would Mises do?
Right, and Mises is a very interesting figure because he was a Jew and he lived in Vienna. He was very acculturated, didn't really think of himself as Jewish. He was just a regular economist. Unfortunately, Viennese culture thought of him as Jewish, and he was discriminated, as reported by Haig, discriminated against for a position at the University of Vienna because of his Jewishness. So that he was a little bit of a marginalized figure, and but he was driven out of Vienna after. After the rise of Nazi youth movements in Vienna, before the Germans actually invaded the country, but he saw what was coming and got out, mainly because he saw the social movement that was growing, a Nazi-style social movement growing in Vienna, and said, "Look, I better get out of here just to be safe." And so, I mean, after a lifetime of fighting the Reds, he suddenly was driven out of town by the brown shirts. So it was a very scary experience for him. Went to Vienna, spent 6 years in exile as a refugee, basically, and then came to the U.S. And he wrote this book called Omnipotent Government in 1944. It was a big attack on the Nazis. And yet, in this very book, even though he himself had faced, a grim attacks by the state for his Jewishness, he defends the right of private companies to discriminate, private individuals to discriminate based on whatever grounds, ethnic grounds, nationalistic grounds, whatever.
Freedom from association.
Yeah, and he defends this in Omnipotent Government, which is a very sort of interesting thing for him to do as a Jew.
Yeah.
So in this article, I recounted his argument. And basically what he did was, he said that if you preserve the market economy, there's an integrationist ethos that happens with the market economy. Like, if you're Polish, you might prefer to buy from the Polish butcher that's local. But if the Polish butcher who's local, raises his meat prices 2 and 3 times, you might buy from the Italian a couple of blocks away, actually. And and you might hate Jews, but if you've got a heart condition and there's only a Jewish doctor can fix it, you're going to go to him, And
you get over those things real quick.
Right. So he says that after years of Nazi propaganda, there was still nothing they could do to stop people from actually dealing with Jews, because it was very much in their interest. I mean, there's an ethos in the market and a driving force of the market that draws people together, even despite their religious intolerances. and ethnic preferences that we still are drawn to deal with each other because we gain advantage from doing that, and the costs of discrimination are essentially too high to maintain. And Mises takes that extra step and says that's precisely why governments resort to things like
ghettos and
ghettos
and
Jim Crow and so on, is because they can't accomplish through market means what they want to, the social outcomes they want to accomplish through state means. So I think that's a very interesting argument. And so as I say, this is now Thursday. I just published the article today. It took me a full week to kind of think through this issue and understand, like, how is Mises's point different from the conventional view on these subjects? And I wanted to write it in a way that was compelling and grappled with the issue actually very carefully. Essentially, what it comes down to is this: you have to have a market. You want a market society, and you never want a state big enough to impose certain social outcomes based on any view. You know, sexual views, race views, religious views, whatever. That there's a driving force within the market commercial society to bring people together. And that states that are discriminating states, you know, the states that want to use the law to cause people to discriminate, will have to resort to political means because they can't depend on market means. So
because the market makes it expensive.
Yeah, it makes it too expensive, and it doesn't
costs on being a jerk.
Right. So my conclusion is basically that Austin was right. You know, and that even in the case that Gary Johnson mentioned, I began to think through this. Let's say there's a local utility company that really does hate a neighborhood of Muslims and wants to shut down their power. Well, you've got an opportunity then for a private power generation company to show up and look. Let's just think about the reality in this country today. If that actually happened, you would have private provision showing up within a matter of hours and selling electricity, you know, very quickly to the neighborhood. So I don't, you know, in other words, you can't use market-based discrimination means, even in the case of a public utility, to accomplish your goals. That it just wouldn't work. So
I would think a simple exception to, you know, utilities that are quasi monopolies, you know,
right.
You know, maybe make the anti-discrimination laws apply to them, but them only. You know, it's simply because of their quasi-monopoly status.
And I wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, that would be fine. It makes sense. But the thing is, I don't think that Gary had actually thought through it very carefully. The only thing I would say about this is that I defend Gary's intentions here. I think that he's right to be concerned about intolerance. And to worry about the implications of the repeal of a non-discrimination law for religious minorities in the country these days. And in the age of Trump, you know, I think we all have a reason to be worried about intolerance and bigotry and fascistic sort of impulses.
I mean, I can totally imagine a scenario where Muslims feel like they need to do exactly what Mises did and flee for their safety. I can totally see that happening.
Yeah.
You know, in the next, you know, 5 or so years, I could see us getting to that point.
Oh, sure. Foreign nationals studying, you know, in this country, you know, feeling discriminated against and feeling a political threat to them. Yeah. As you say, doing what Mises did, which, by the way, was why I was so concerned about there was an explosion after I complained about the Trump chalkings at Emory University. But I can tell you, you know, I was there that morning. It's actually a very alarming thing to wake up in the morning and have your whole campus festooned with Trump slogans.
Did you feel microaggressed against?
Well, not me personally. I mean, although, you know, I guess I'm part of the ruling class, right? You know, I presumably I'm not one of those people that's being targeted by the Trump movement. Though I don't know, libertarians never fare well under the brown shirts, so I'm not entirely sure about that. But I felt a special pain for the religious minorities on campus, and especially the foreign nationals that were studying there. And there are plenty. You know, it's probably 20% or 22%, I think, of the campus. And it's interesting because it really came off as a kind of a political threat, like you're not wanted here. And it worries me. I mean, this kind of environment can get very dicey. It's an environment of intolerance, and it's a threatening environment. Essentially, I mean, just the word Trump alone, is like weaponized, these days, and we know that. I mean, we know that by the nature of the political regime under which we live.
I wonder how much of that Trump intends and how much has just been sort of hijacked or twisted.
Yeah, I don't know about that either, but I'm not sure that it matters. I mean, from the point of view of people whose lives are impacted, whether Trump really means this or if it's the Trump movement, or he had to reduce it down to such a distilled form, to get political support. I don't entirely know. I mean, it's fascinating when you look back at the structure and nature of the movement for Hitler. Many of his supporters did not think he was the ideal person to represent their interests. And at the higher levels of the Nazi Party, some people say that there was a casual anti-Semitism, but there was no
half Jewish.
right. There's no desire to erect gas chambers and kill everybody. I mean, it was just. It's just that anti-Semitism became this nice slogan. You have to scapegoat people. Even if you're squeamish about it, or whatever. And Trump himself says this. He says, "I love the Mexican people." Well, I'm sure there's probably truth to that. But
3 of my girlfriends were Mexican. I don't know.
Yeah, right. That's probably right. I mean, he probably doesn't hate Mexicans. He doesn't hate the Chinese. He doesn't hate Muslims. But in order to achieve the sort of political aims that he has, he's
jumped on a bandwagon.
Yeah, he's blowing dog whistles that call forth the right kind of.
He's using a stereotype to his advantage. For whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, and for political reasons, right? I mean, so.
Yeah.
And American culture celebrates the winner in politics. Like, however you get there, that's awesome, and Trump sees this, and he's like, look, I'm just going to win, whatever it takes. And then they may call me a bigot now, but later they'll herald me as a genius, which is in fact what's happening. So,
I mean, he called it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed it, but he called it. And, people have been saying, look, he said you're an idiot and that's why you would support him. And here you are supporting him because you're an idiot. And they hear what they want to hear.
Yeah, that's right. So it's the Trump movement that actually worries me more than anything. It's the culture and driving sort of ethos of the Trump movement that worries me more than Trump himself. I mean, I have no doubt that like if Trump actually does obtain power, he'll quickly make his peace with the ruling class, and and that's.
You think so?
I think probably so. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
they seem to be shaking in their boots that he wouldn't. That they'd be like out on their tuckuses.
I'm not entirely sure I understand why that is. Why there's just such a frenzy.
Or maybe it's the consultant class because he's not using any consultants. They're like telling all of their people whose ears they have, this guy, he's a big threat. Rachel, he is? Oh, okay.
That's the best explanation I can come up with. It's just that, like in American political culture, they want you to rise through the ranks.
Yeah.
They want you to start at a certain level and be part of a network.
Knock on doors and collect signatures and all that.
Yeah, and get the right sponsorships and have the right people backing you.
Yeah, and hire the right insiders, and that's a Rush Limbaugh idea. That's why the establishment hates him so much, is because he hasn't been hiring the right political consultants who make a killing to tell him what to do. He's totally shown that they're useless.
Yeah,
he's shown that they're not necessary.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. I mean, I think it's even more substantial than that. I mean, normally candidates for president are hawk to a whole wide degree of special interests, and that's probably a good thing in a way. I mean, it helps limit their power because it limits their autocratic.
It makes them accountable.
Yeah, it makes them accountable to somebody. I mean, they're racketeers and graft and all that kind of stuff. But that's probably better than an isolated dictator. Who.
Yeah. we're seeing that it can indeed be worse.
I know, right? This has been the upshot of everything. I don't know what's happened to you, Rachel, this year, but I mean, 2015 has been, and up until very recently, it's been very interesting for me because it's slightly tweaked my outlook on things, and under the realization that, you know, we're a little bit like in the late age of the Roman Empire, where you know, the Caesars took control based on, you know, the desire to root out corruption and control the bureaucracy, you know, so they wanted all power unto themselves. And I'm afraid that that's sort of where we're headed in our country, you know.
I swear my powers can only be used for good.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Well, and it turns out that, you know, in our own tradition, Rachel, there's a lot of writings on the subject. I mean, people really need to go to their bookshelf and dust off that copy of Road to Serfdom, because you know, Road to Serfdom was a warning against the brown shirts and how they would use the failings of the present system to obtain more power, and I think that's what we're seeing now. You know, and it's true for the Reds too. I mean, if you want to consider Bernie a Red, I mean, I have to write more about this Bernie Sanders movement. I'm not sure I really get. I mean, I sort of get it. I mean, like when I listen to him speak, he's sort of compelling in some way. But I mean, I don't think it's a movement that's communist. I think that people he's a different form of Trump. You know, and he appeals to a different type of person. You know,
he's like this endearing old man, grandfatherly type that cares about you, and you know. Like you go visit your grandfather and he gives you $5 and, you know, gives you free stuff or whatever. That's the appeal of Bernie.
Yeah, it's not about nationalizing property in any case.
It's people who just have not thought about these issues, you know, very deeply. It's very, you know, on the surface sort of thinking.
Yeah, and he's appealing to young people very much, you know, especially because he's talking about, you know, about jobs and economic opportunity and that sort of thing. I mean, but he's not a red in the old-fashioned sense. He calls himself a democratic socialist, but which I don't even know what that means anymore, really. But he's his red-based politics are, you know, it's not really. It's not like Stalin or Lenin in any case. You know, it's something different. But I don't know. You know, we could be facing a Sanders Trump ticket, which would be amazing to think of in 2016. Actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's thinking about Trump versus Clinton, but what if it was Trump versus Sanders?
Well, there's a lot of headlines today that are mapping out the New York Times, or maybe it's Politico, or maybe it's Vox, or one.
Yeah, they were saying that even with the superdelegates, he's in striking distance.
Yep. Yeah, so it's not out of the question, which would clarify things, I think, for libertarians. It's like, okay, great. 2016, we have a choice between the social
authoritarian,
right, and then that raises the profile of the Libertarian Party, actually, which is a fascinating thing to think of. So the nomination turns out to be actually
very interesting.
Yeah,
and actually kind of important this year. I mean, it's important, but. I mean, it's really important, actually. I mean, we need to be ready for prime time.
Yeah, it is, and we've got three very interesting candidates, all with strengths and weaknesses, I must say. I mean, I like the vagabond revolutionary spirit of McAfee, but if you actually break down the policies, at least according to the debate, he's very conventional, actually.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about McAfee because I've been thinking about him a lot lately.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you listen to what he said the other day, he said, well, the U.S. government has commitments. We have to keep those overseas and domestically with the welfare state. I mean, it's like, you know, a little strange. I mean, for a guy who seems like a revolutionary techno-radical, I mean, he didn't come across as very, I mean, his plans, you know, for governance actually seem very conventional.
Did you read Judd Weiss's pieces on him lately of why he's supporting him, why he's...
Yeah.
Because McAfee's taken the very unprecedented but unusual step of choosing a running mate already in Judd Weiss, who is a photographer that is very well known to a lot of us in the Liberty movement. He takes all those beautiful black and white profile pictures that so many of us have. But Judd wrote some very eloquent and detailed things, I think, about why a radical like John McAfee might be the right choice, simply to get attention.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I think it all comes down to what you want in a candidate. If you want a guy who's got who's got plausible managerial experience in government, I mean, obviously Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson.
If you want a person who's like an expert at social media and can really get the word out and use every tool possible and is very, very good actually, and on the media.
And also very well versed in libertarian theory. Austin Peterson.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, even though he's very young and all that kind of stuff, but
he's 35, which is not all that young.
No, he just kind of looks like a kid. Yeah. But.
Yeah, he looks 12. I mean, he's got some good life experience. He's got some very smart things that he's done with his time. But yeah, I understand Austin's weaknesses too.
And also Austin is making an overt appeal to the sort of conservatarian constitutionalist founding fathers.
Yeah, the pro-life
founding fathers, blah blah blah. So he's hoping to draw a lot of disgruntled Republicans in. I think that's his target. And like I say, he's very clever as a publicist, and even in that debate, he showed how quick on his feet he is, and he's
taking this seriously.
Yeah, he's not a stupid guy. So he's not.
He's really not.
And he might represent well in a way, in that PR sense.
He can say this. He can say that he is the first millennial to run for president, and that's true.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not crazy. A lot of people treated his candidacy as like a joke for a long time, but now it's I wouldn't rule it out actually. I mean, I think he performs very well, and also a candidate who starts with low expectations actually has an advantage because everybody's expecting him to be a silly publisher of an online magazine and a little bit of an internet troll, and then he turns out
nowhere to go but impress.
Right, he's kind of awesome, in these public debate things, and that's what it's all about. So
yeah,
and Gary. Gary has some weaknesses in this respect. I mean, he seems a little bit bloodless, sometimes a little bit lazy. Even in the debate the other night, he talked with greater passion about his fiance than he did, about his presidential run. So
really super awkward, actually.
Very, very sweet, right? I mean, I love him, but it's a question of like, do you have the technological sophistication and the passion to carry this through? I mean, I certainly don't. So, okay, that's no strike against him as a person. But, if you're going to choose a candidate and you have to choose between these three, maybe, that's a slight problem. And then McAfee, I kind of would get Judd's point that, we need a kind of a shocking person to say alarming things to kind of shake up the system. Let's just grant that he's not going to win. We know this. So it's a question of like, what are we seeking to accomplish? And in that sense, McAfee, has some advantages there. So it's going to be a fascinating. I mean, for the first time in my life, the run for the Libertarian nomination is actually interesting.
It really is, and I am planning to go down to Orlando as a delegate. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited to participate in that way.
So tell us, Rachel, who you're supporting. Come on, you don't know, do you?
Austin Peterson at this point.
Really?
But I will say that either any of those three, I will back 100% if they get the nomination.
Yeah.
I will be totally comfortable supporting any of those top three. Huh. So whoever gets it has my support 100%.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm an Austin Peterson backer. But it kind of puts me in a quandary because and nobody really brings this up, but in the Libertarian Party, as much crap as we give the Democrats for having all their super delegate insiders, the party insiders, we're all super delegates in the Libertarian Party. We can all go down as delegates, and regardless of how our state vote however we want. And I'm sort of having a little crisis of conscience for that because my state overwhelmingly voted for Gary Johnson. So I'm gonna feel a little tug.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that the right thing?
I don't know. I mean, I have to say, I find myself completely like not neutral in principle, but neutral in practice on the whole thing. I can see a case for all these guys, and the funny thing is, I'm friends with all of them, right? So
Yeah.
Gary's a friend, Austin's a friend, John I met recently, and we hit it off right away. He'd read all my stuff.
I bet.
So and my brain is kind of a little bit with McAfee because we're both in the technology fields, and I like his.
I can see that.
Austin is an old friend, and we're social media buddies, and we've done a gazillion interviews together, and we've worked together on so many projects. Gary, I really admire him. I appreciate all his, as governor of Mexico, and he was awesome. So there's good reasons for me to like all of them and to have reservations about each of them.
Yeah, but isn't that so much better than like all of the Republicans that are like, never Trump?
I know, and what's funny too. Did you feel this at the debate the other night when you watched it? Was a sense of relief. Like, isn't it awesome that people were talking about fundamental issues like the right to disassociate?
Yeah.
I mean, they were talking about principled issues of what should the government do, and that sort of thing. So it was nice.
John Stossel.
Yeah, John Stossel. Such a visionary to put this debate together.
Yay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just awesome. And just the timing, it was just immaculate because now everybody suddenly really cares,
Yeah. And so my tongue-in-cheek idea, this is not serious, but I posted on Twitter that maybe we should have a offensive cake decorating, like design contest. And then whoever wins, Gary Johnson has to bake the winning design. I thought it was funny.
Well, and when Austin first made that argument, I rolled my eyes. I thought, Austin, you were such a provocateur, and I thought, did you have to go? Because I mean, honestly, if I had been there, Rachel, I would have said something like, "Well, Gary, I understand your point, and it's not entirely implausible. You're certainly right to condemn religious bigotry. However, we are setting up an awkward situation, under which you could find conditions under which religious minorities would be forced to serve those, whom they find objectionable. And I'm concerned about any stepping away from libertarian principle only because you don't really know how it's going to end up. I would say something like that nobody would remember. It would be a convoluted, a long, and highly intelligent, I guess you could say, sort of series of sentences that would be addressing his point too thoughtfully, really. And do you know what I mean? And so Austin, who understands the way people think, just
condenses it down to.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that a Nazi should have to bake? A Jew would have to bake a Nazi cake? I mean, and he went right for the jugular. And also, I don't like to. This is why I'm not a good debater. I don't like to make people feel uncomfortable. I always like to. That's why I never agree to debates because I don't go for the jugular. I usually like to have a thoughtful exchange of ideas.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but Austin's not that way. I mean, he knows.
he does not mind making people feel uncomfortable, and I have a little bit of an issue with him for that. I think he's been a little bit mean to some of my friends lately, but that's another issue.
Yeah, he can be extraordinary. I mean, look, he's mean at cocktail parties. I mean, I've been with him. I mean, he'll sit around with 5 people and suddenly just and everybody's getting along. Then he says something outrageous to cause everybody not to get along. And I'm like, I just want to say, will you shut up? We were having a good time, That's Austin's way.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the way of politics, and I think, in public debates, in the coming months where we want a libertarian who can really just like go for the jugular against these media lapdogs, who's just shilling for the state all the time. I mean, he actually could do us some good. I mean, he could actually make a gigantic. I mean, maybe his weird, slightly trollish personality is exactly what we need. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
I think any of them would do us good in some ways and maybe do us harm in others.
Yeah.
And it's just impossible to know. We just got to throw somebody up and see what happens.
And actually, you're saying that makes me realize something too. It's a big responsibility, and it's not one I would want to take on. You know, to become the spokesman for the cause of human liberty, which is the greatest idea humanity ever came up with, and it's the source of life, happiness, and civilization. And suddenly it falls to you and you alone to represent. You know, on Face the Nation on Sunday morning. That's a big responsibility. So, you know, kudos to all three of these guys and anybody else who's running, you know, for just being willing to take that on. It's not a job I would want.
On that note, let's move on to a really important topic, and that is Zootopia.
Oh, yay!
You wrote a review of Zootopia. You went to see this new Disney cartoon. Is it Disney Pixar?
Well, in first place, you're you know, listen to your language. Cartoon, come on, and animated feature, please.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Also, I didn't.
I remember your review was what made me eventually go see Frozen.
Yes, of course. Well, these are the only. I mean, I only like movies with fake people. You know, I mean, these are the best ones. They're the most mature themes, and I get so excited and I enjoy them so much. Zootopia thrilled me to the point that I actually wrote not one but two articles on the topic.
You have two? I didn't see the other one.
Well, the other one was a kind of a long. It was like a 1,800-word riff on the theme song "Try Everything." Where I argued that it was, you know, a brilliant sort of tribute to a kind of Lachmanian Hayekian view of the universe as being kaleidoscopic, and where there's an uncertainty of the future, and so we have to celebrate the things that we do wrong in order to sort of gradually learn what to do right. And that is the actual words of the song. You know, birds don't fly; they fall down and get up. You know, yeah, that kind of thing. And
okay, now you got me excited.
Yeah, and she says, you know, she hopes to you know, her biggest hope is that she'll continue to do lots of wrong things. You know,
maybe this is a bad movie for my boys.
On into the future, yeah, because it's only through failing that we actually can discover the right path forward. And I broke it down that this applies not just on an individual level, but on a social level too. That we need a system of freedom so that we can discover the right way to move forward. None of us knows the right way, which is precisely why we don't want to lock down the system.
We need to make mistakes. If you're not free to make mistakes, you're not free.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the theme of the song, and I think it's brilliant. And I listened to it like 16 times. I mean, you know, it was performed by I wanted to say Keisha, but it's oh, now I can't remember the thing. Who's that? Lebanese Colombian girl from Florida. Shakira, thank you. Not Keisha. It's just awesome, and in the movie is played by Gazelle, surrounded by these sort of manly tigers who are doing this very cool dance, and I know all the dance moves, by the way.
Oh, awesome!
Did you remember?
Having a glass of wine to demonstrate.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, no, they're really awesome, and it's just a wonderful movie from the very beginning, and just a great tribute to freedom and meritocracy and the desire to overcome, you know, barriers in the way. And there's other reasons the movie is wonderful, because it's got one of the great send-ups of the DMV ever. If she shows up to the DMV, and the DMV, all the
sloth. Yeah, we all have seen the promotion.
Right. So it's just hilarious. And, you know, the government turns out to be corrupt, and, you know, that sort of thing. And she has to deal with the government corruption. And she always keeps a smile on her face, and just keeps pushing forward, and keeps making mistakes and just being better and better. So it's a wonderful.
Sounds like it's very well timed.
Yeah, it's just brilliant. I want to see it again. I've only seen it one time now. Frozen was a wonderful movie too, of course, but I think this one's maybe not at the Frozen level, but it's close. It's very, very good. Yeah.
Yay! Well, the Libertarian Party has done me the huge favor of scheduling their national convention in Orlando this year at the end of May, which lit a fire under me to go ahead and schedule that trip to take my boys to Disney for the first time.
Good.
Which is why I had kids. Don't tell anybody, but I mean, that is why you have kids, is to take them to Disney.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, be sure and visit the the Disney Princess castle. It's a long wait, but you might get to meet Elsa, for example.
Cinderella's castle?
No, it's a separate kind of meet and greet for just for the princesses, and you can meet Elsa and Mulan and so on. You know. So
you very famously went to Disney about a year ago, didn't you?
Right, and I met Elsa in person, and it was a very moving moment for me because I never imagined I would meet Elsa, and when I did, I was like in tears, you know. And by the time I actually,
oh, Jeffrey, you know that wasn't the real Elsa, right?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I mean, she was Elsa.
She was dressed like Elsa.
I have my picture with her. I don't, you know, I can show it to you. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful, Jeffrey.
I'm just pointing out that it seemed, I mean, I think it was Elsa. I don't think that they're doing anything fraudulent there. It seemed like Elsa.
And here I am destroying all your hopes and dreams.
No, I mean, I'm not believing you, so it's fine. And
okay,
her sister was also there. And I thanked her sister for being such a devoted, you know, and everything. And
oh, you're like 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, and meanwhile, my 5-year-old is like, "Is the Easter Bunny real?" I'm like, "We like to pretend that he is, you know." And I go into this whole thing about, you know, it's a game we play, just like Santa Claus. It's a game we play. It's for fun. No, it's not really real, but you know, we just play along because it's a fun game.
Oh,
you know, and then Easter morning, you know, I knock on the door and I leave the Easter baskets on the outside of the door. And like for the rest of the day, he's like totally convinced that was the Easter Bunny was here.
That's the right way. You know, I'm glad you have this. You know, libertarians think about this issue all the time. You know, it's like, you know, the state is an illusion and a lie. And so then, so we get overly consumed with this idea of like constantly telling children, you know, about the lies of Santa Claus and, you know, I don't know, God and, you know, the Easter Bunny and so on. But, you know, at some point, I mean, where's the fun in life? You know, I mean,
oh yeah,
like you say, can't you play games? I mean, we all play games. I mean, chess isn't real either, you know. You know, we all play, you know, we all play games online, and they're not real. You know, I mean, this conversation's not real. I mean, we're talking through digits. I mean, it's not a good example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, there's, you know, life is a game, and it's filled with games, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, and so I think you're really sort of denying your kids something if you're. You know, I mean, look, it's up to the parents really, but
yeah, but I mean, a lot of parents, I think, approach it as, you know, very either or. Either Santa is fake and we don't do Santa at all, or, you know, Santa is real and we do Santa, and, you know, because we wouldn't want to confuse our kids. I'm like, kids play pretend all the time. It's very easy. It's very easy to just say, no, that's actually a man in a costume, but we're going to pretend that he's Santa Claus and play along because we love to play pretend. And all of these people are pretending to be elves and, you know, Easter bunnies or Santa Claus or, you know, or whatever. And isn't that wonderful that we're all playing pretend?
Well, I think it's a very good common sense way to approach it. And I think too much rationalism in this regard can get a little tedious, you know?
Yeah, way tedious.
You know, so yeah, so I enjoyed going to. So I hope when you go, you'll go to and meet at least one princess and get some pictures.
Well, my little handsome princes, they know how to kiss a hand and they know how to treat a princess right at age 3 and 5. So yeah,
you haven't seen Zootopia yet, am I right?
No, but I will make a point to see it. Maybe I'll take my boys to see it tomorrow. Actually, we've got a night to ourselves where I have to figure out something to do. So maybe we'll try.
It's a good time.
It's still kind of hard to go to the movies and like sit through something at this age, but we're getting better and better. And it might be time for another attempt. So.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's a good time. I mean, and you can go to a matinee; it's cheap, and I think you'll just be delighted, you know, and then go through and read my articles about the subject afterwards, and my article about my favorite song, "Try Everything," which is just a wonderful sort of.
Which is a good message for my picky eater.
Well, I get just so excited about these things, you know. I mean, and just the way that Disney has been making films for a long time, they know how to do it, right? So.
Oh yeah, they do.
So your heart just like fills with joy until the point it just bursts, right? So when the gazelle at the end, you know, does the pop song and she's kind of got her slinky, sexy way and she's singing this awesome song and everything, you just have to stand up and cheer. I don't know what else are you gonna do. I mean, it's everything is just so perfect, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's time to go. Thank you very much for joining me, Jeffrey Tucker.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, and it's been fun.
It's always a delight.
I won't see you in Orlando, but I am going to Texas tomorrow for the Texas the Libertarian convention.
Oh.
Where I am the featured speaker. So.
Texas is cool. They had me as a speaker once, a million years ago.
No, that's fabulous. Well, it's wonderful to see you, Rachel. All the best to you.
Good to see you too.
Goodbye.
All right. Goodbye.